Hello and welcome to this video walkthrough for the rules of Mandate of Heaven. Mandate of Heaven is a deck management game in which players take on the roles of nobles and warlords vying for power in dynastic China. When setting up the game, leave plenty of room for cards to the left of the board, as this is where players will be playing their cards throughout the game. Each player should choose a color and take 6 player markers in that color. Each player also receives a starter deck at the beginning of the game. The starter deck consists of 12 cards, 4 levies, 4 concubines, and 4 rice cards. Each player sets aside 1 levy and 1 concubine card. Then, each player shuffles the remaining cards to create a personal draw pile. In games with fewer than 4 players, additional start cards should be removed from the game and placed in the game box. All remaining cards in the game should be shuffled to create the main draw deck, which should be placed near the board. Each player gets a set of 3 court tokens: a value 1 token, a value 2 token, and a value 3 token. The tokens should be placed in a single stack, with the 3 at the bottom, the 2 in the middle, and the 1 at the top. Now players are ready to place the tiles on the board. Legacy tiles come in 3 types: commodity, military, and civics. Collecting legacy tiles is one way to score victory points in Mandate of Heaven. In a 3 or 4 player game, use all the tiles. In a 2-player game, remove 2 tiles of each type from the game. Shuffle the legacy tiles and create random stacks of 6 tiles each. Place each stack face up in the spaces of the 5th column of the game board. Project tiles come in 4 different sets of 5 tiles each. The different sets represent significant projects like the Great Wall of China or the Grand Canal. Each group of project tiles creates a single picture. You can also tell them apart by the different color on the back of each set. Players score victory points for collecting multiple tiles of the same set during the game. In a 3 or 4 player game, use all 4 sets. In a 2-player game, remove 1 set of project tiles from the game. Place the project tiles in the spaces of the 6th column of the game board. Now fill the remaining spaces on the board with cards from the main draw deck. Cards should be placed from top to bottom, left to right. Be certain that all start cards have been removed from the game before setting up the board. The setup you see here is ready for a 3 or 4 player game. In a 2-player game, tiles and cards will only occupy the first 3 rows of the game board. The bottom row is not used in a 2-player game. Before the game begins, each player selects a home province. Each player's home province will provide them with small bonuses during the game. Select a player to place first. That player places their smaller player marker on one of the spaces along the left side of the game board. Then the player to the right places their marker, and so on until each player has claimed a home province. The last player to claim a home province will be the first player for the initial round of the game. That player should place one of their player markers on the summer space of the season track along the bottom of the game board. Each player takes the levy and concubine they set aside and places the 2 cards to the left of their home province marker. the players begin the game with no cards in hand. Players should place one of their player markers on top of the cards they have played next to the board. The area off the board to the left of each row of cards is called a province. The provinces are where the players will be playing military and civics cards throughout the game. Some cards have buildings on them, while others do not. A province can hold any number of cards, but can only hold 3 buildings. Players should indicate their control of a province with a player marker. It is possible to control another player's home province. The first round of the game begins in the summer phase. During summer, players with one or more military cards in a province may take one card or tile from the corresponding row of cards. The total military power on the cards in a province determines the cards and tiles to which a player has access. Players in control of their home provinces get a +1 bonus to their military power. Each point of military power allows the player to select a card or tile up to that many spaces from their province. A player may choose to take a card or tile closer to their province if they wish. Unless a card ability states otherwise, players can only take one card or tile from each row they occupy. Cards taken during this phase go directly into a player's active discard pile. Players are not obligated to take cards during this phase if they do not want to. Once each eligible player has taken cards or passed, the first player moves their marker to the fall phase of the season track. Beginning with the first player, each player with any civics power in their provinces may select one card or tile from those remaining on the board. The total civics power on the cards in all of a player's provinces combined determines the cards and tiles to which they have access. Each point of civics power allows a player to select any card or tile from the corresponding column. A player may choose to take a card or tile from a lower value column if they wish. Players in control of their home province receive a +1 bonus to civics power. As with the previous phase, eligible players can choose to take a card or pass in turn. Cards taken during this phase go directly into a player's active discard pile. Once each player has taken cards or passed, the first player moves their marker to the New Year space of the season track. The first player replaces all empty card spaces on the board from the main deck. Each player would normally discard any cards remaining in their hand, though players will not have any cards to discard in the first round of play. Players draw a new hand of 5 cards. If a player's draw pile is exhausted, they shuffle their active discard pile to create a new draw pile. If a player has fewer than 5 cards remaining in their deck, the player continues to play with those cards that remain. The current first player retrieves their marker from the season track. The player to the left of the current first player places one of their markers on the winter space of the season track and becomes the new first player. Then a new round begins. For the remainder of the game, each round will begin with the winter phase rather than the summer phase. During winter, each player can act simultaneously. Each player adds together the total maintenance that must be collected from their subjects. A player's maintenance is equal to their visible court cost token plus the total maintenance value on each card they have in play. Each player discards from their hand into their inactive discard pile until they have paid their total maintenance. Military and civics cards each have a value of 1 when used to pay maintenance. Commodity cards are worth their face value when discarded to pay maintenance. Remember to ignore the coin value on civics and military cards when using them to pay maintenance. This indicates the maintenance cost of that card, not the value to help pay that cost. As the game progresses, players will need to pay progressively more maintenance, and there will come a point when a player cannot meet their cost with the cards in their hand. If a player cannot meet their maintenance value with what is in their hand, that player must discard from their draw pile. Each card discarded this way has a value of 1, regardless of the card type. If the draw pile runs out of cards, the active discard should be shuffled to create a new draw pile, and the player should continue discarding until they have met the cost. If a player still cannot meet their maintenance cost, they collapse. When a player collapses, they remove all of their cards from the provinces. The player's entire deck is placed in their inactive discard pile. The player discards their top court cost token. The player will not participate in the current round of play. During the New Year phase, the player will shuffle their entire deck, create a new active draw pile, and draw a hand of 5 cards. If a player has fewer than 5 cards remaining in their deck and controls no cards in any of the provinces, that player may choose to collapse during the winter phase.